Maggie, one of the biggest structures in the Milky Way. Did you know that hydrogen was actually only formed several thousand years after the universe itself? The most basic atom there is and crucial to so many elements of life, quite literally. Hydrogen was first formed about 370,000 years after the collision which gave rise to our universe and is a key component in many cosmic beings such as stars, clouds, and planets. It is the most commonly occurring element in the universe. Scientists report that it is still in fact difficult to always detect the individual hydrogen clouds in the interstellar medium. As such, astronomers struggle to accurately track and study the early formation of star structures, which also means it is hard to monitor galactic evolutions which change via these processes. All of this makes the recent discovery of Maggie all the more impressive. Discovered less than a week into 2022, a group of astronomers from the Max Planck Institute of Astronomy observed and recorded a huge hydrogen gas cloud filament in our very own galaxy. Named Maggie, it is said to be located some 55,000 light-years away on the complete other side of the Milky Way. The noteworthy bit is that Maggie is one of the longest ever and 130 light-years wide. The longest other known hydrogen gas clouds usually measure around the 800 light-year mark in length for comparison. From further highly technical experiments carried out to verify factors such as velocity, radiation, and wavelength of Maggie, the astronomers were able to confirm that Maggie is indeed one coherent structure, which supports theories made by a previous team from roughly a year before this. This time, though, it can be marked down in the record books as having been proved to be legitimate beyond reasonable doubt. The team, elated with their find, are now analyzing Maggie's elemental composition to figure out how the hydrogen behaves within the filament. So far, they know that Maggie contains a concentration of roughly 8% molecular hydrogen compared to the overall mass. But continue researching as they remind us there is so much more still to discover. Scientists say Andromeda has swallowed other galaxies and ours is next. The Milky Way's sibling galaxy, Andromeda, has devoured countless smaller galaxies in its 10 billion-year lifetime. It should be no surprise that as the closest galaxy to it, we are destined to become Andromeda's next meal. The galaxy is set to collide with our Milky Way in a mere 4 billion years. Granted, none of us will be alive to witness the event. But cosmically speaking, 4 billion years is but a handful of time. Who knows what will become of the Earth by then, or of us? Perhaps our descendants will be alive to witness the cataclysm, or perhaps humanity will fall long before then. Regardless, Andromeda will swallow us. Researchers have dedicated themselves to studying Andromeda's previous cosmic meals via analyzing the cloud of gas that surrounds the galaxy. This research showed that Andromeda has undergone 2 prior large feeding events. The first occurred in the ancient period of our cosmos, whereas the second happened within at least a few billion years of our existence. Scientists used the Pan-Andromeda Archaeological Survey with a telescope atop of the Mauna Kea in Hawaii, owned by Canada, France, and Hawaii. The PANAS is designed to recreate Andromeda's structure as it was billions of years ago in its components and evolution. This field of the industry is often referred to as galactic archaeology. The research is run by Dougal McKee, who states the globular clusters that we measured were probably not formed when smaller galaxies were shredded by Andromeda. The most likely scenario based on the properties of the clusters is that they were formed in the smaller galaxies. And when those galaxies were later destroyed by Andromeda, the clusters were deposited into Andromeda's halo. The aforementioned clusters seem to have been from the GC hub group, or the feeding that occurred recently, speaking of course in cosmic terms. Comparatively, the scientists deemed the clusters formed from the ancient feeding the GC non-group. The separate groups rotate at different angles around Andromeda. It is uncertain whether Andromeda devoured several tiny galaxies or 2 or more large ones. Maggie stated that his team's observations are broadly consistent and assures everyone that they constantly check their data to ensure their research is accurate. In the future, the team is hoping to use the Hubble Space Telescope to further their research and to find out more about the elusive Andromeda. Regarding Andromeda's past galactic binges, Maggie claims we can no longer see the streams left over from the destruction of whatever system or systems were destroyed. The stars are there, but their spatial positions have long since spread out to form a relatively smooth overall distribution. The Milky Way and Andromeda have roughly the same mass. This means that the future collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda won't proceed in the same way as for the smaller galaxies Andromeda has eaten in the past. Maggie states that, at least in theory, the collision will be destructive, immense, and bright. He believes that the collision will cause both galaxies to fracture their spiral disks and that they will merge into something more elliptical in form. Fortunately for future descendants, should humanity still exist, Earth should be preserved from any harm and will bring several centuries worth of glorious skies. The Hungry Blob at the edge of the universe. Astronomers have some rather fantastic and somewhat amusing names for their projects, discoveries, and equipment. Whether you are giggling at the European Southern Observatory's VLT, that's Very Large Telescope, or impressed at the naming of TESS, NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, there's about to be another astronomical object's name that will stick in your head. A blob. The Very Hungry Blob was discovered in 2009, though it has been sitting in our universe for much longer. So while the Very Hungry Blob is a great name, the real name is the Lyman Alpha Blob, and we have a lot of questions about exactly what it is. Astronomer Masami Uchi, working in the observatories of the Carnegie Institution for Science in Pasadena, California, was the lead researcher of the team who wound up spotting and pinpointing the blob. Uchi and his team that have been seen are a series of small galaxies merging together to form one larger, far bigger galaxy. This is not the only suggestion going around, however. Some have suggested that cold gas moving into the galaxy is essentially feeding it, allowing it to grow, and other astronomers have suggested that the glowing blob is a cloud of gas rising in temperature as a result of a nearby supermassive black hole. What makes this observation all the more interesting is how far it is from Earth. At the time of discovery, it was the fourth most distant object we had ever observed. This is a staggering 12.9 billion light-years away. Given how long it takes light to travel, our observations are essentially looking back in time, as by the time we are observing this blob, it will have aged a great deal and certainly will not look like this anymore. In fact, this blob is about 12.9 billion years old, bringing us right back to just after the formation of the universe, which is estimated to be between 13 billion and 14 billion years old. Uchi and the research team managed to see by looking at the infrared light that was coming from space. This is a wavelength outside of the visible light spectrum and can be described as feeling like heat. This strange blob clocks in at a diameter half the size of our own Milky Way. So if it is a larger galaxy forming, it was still small in size when we made these observations. However, scientists do not anticipate it remaining small for too long. Predictions and estimations all seem to indicate that this blob is a small galaxy having a growth spurt. It had the equivalent of 40 billion suns inside it when it was first observed, though could easily have a great deal more now, absorbing and taking in more stars as it goes. A strange blob dating back to the start of the universe is a peculiar discovery, though it goes to show just how much we are waiting to find. Ultramassive black holes. One of the most mind-boggling elements of space is its sheer size. Not only does space itself stretch infinitely away from us in all directions, but the objects within the ever-expanding cosmos display proportionately massive sizes. And when it comes to large objects within the universe, generally black holes will take the prize. Black holes themselves were already almost unbelievably large. So when researchers discovered a class of black holes set apart from the rest by their even larger size, scientists could not believe it, dubbing them supermassive black holes. But it did not stop there. Now there is an even larger class of this mysterious space phenomenon called ultramassive black holes that dwarfs even the unbelievably huge supermassive black holes. But what are ultramassive black holes and why are they just so massive? This is a question that researchers have been attempting to answer since the discovery of ultramassive black holes, but it is a question that does not have a simple answer. A video by Kurzgesagt aptly declared that ultramassive black holes are perhaps the largest single bodies that will ever exist, which is an incredibly strong statement considering the sheer size of the various objects in space. They are not just slightly larger than even supermassive black holes, they absolutely billions upon billions larger than our own sun. In fact, they are so large that they could easily fit multiple solar systems within them. Ton 618, the largest ultramassive black hole so far discovered, clocks in at 66 billion times the mass of the Sun, which is a number almost beyond comprehension. These black holes are usually found in the early days of our universe when slightly different rules applied. But this presents a problem for astrophysicists. According to our timeline of the universe, there was simply not enough mass in these early stages to generate and fuel ultramassive black holes of such epic proportions. At this early stage in the universe formation, there were just the beginning spirals of galaxies with only a few stars interspersed among the swirling gas clouds, which was simply not enough matter to generate black holes dozens of times the mass of the Sun. In a word, ultramassive black holes should not exist and were formed under impossible circumstances. Despite the complexity of the circumstances, researchers had continued to attempt to solve the mystery of how these gargantuan structures were formed. But it seems that every time a theory is proposed, it is quickly disproven as yet another example of the unnatural element of such large black hole formation. For now, having discovered the presence of ultramassive black holes must suffice as researchers to continue to peel back the layers behind how they could have ever formed in the first place. NASA is monitoring a huge escalating anomaly in Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field is an incredibly important aspect to our planet that we do not often talk about, not outside of science lessons at least. The magnetic field can help us keep on track, keeping our compass needles pointing north, but it also keeps our planet habitable by deflecting solar winds that otherwise would threaten to strip away the ozone layer. You might not discuss the magnetic field on a regular basis, but it's a truly valuable player in maintaining life as we know it at home here on Earth. Lately, however, something strange has been happening to that valued player, with NASA feeling the need to actively monitor and track an anomaly found in the magnetic field where the magnetic intensity seems to have dropped. There seems to be a huge area in the magnetic field which is notably less magnetic than it should be, and Southwest Africa has been impacted thus far. This unusual occurrence, known as the South Atlantic Anomaly, has been toying with the minds of scientists for years now. The American Space Agency has a number of satellites and spacecrafts orbiting in space, many of which orbit Earth. The concern here is that with the magnetic field being weakened, there is a greater exposure to the charged particles headed our way from the Sun. Life on Earth, it will have a significant impact on the spacecrafts in orbit of Earth. As they circle our planet at their low orbit altitudes, these crafts will inevitably pass straight through said anomaly. We believe that during these periods where they pass through, the lessened strength of the magnetic field can cause some disturbances in the technology used within these satellites. They can short-circuit, malfunction, and all manner of similar problems where they are struck by high-energy charged protons from the Sun. Typically, if a satellite is hit by one of these particles, then the impact is not usually too severe, usually only what is considered a low-level glitch. However, there is the risk that a large amount of data can be lost when this happens, or even cause permanent damage to crucial elements of the machinery. Between all these possibilities and the increased threat these charged particles pose, it is more necessary than ever for the operators to shut these crafts down before they make it into the area impacted by the South Atlantic anomaly. NASA has begun to keep a closer eye on this, looking at both how best to protect our resources in space and at understanding the science hiding behind this complex phenomenon. Geophysicist Terry Sabaka from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, said this magnetic field is actually a superposition of fields from many current sources. It is the current assumption that the primary source of this is the molten iron in the Earth's outer core, approximately 3,400 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. This molten iron moves, and that movement produces electrical currents that contribute to our magnetic field. It seems as though the lack of consistency in this movement could be where the anomaly is seemingly arising from. Another contributor could be the African Large, Low Shear Velocity Province. This is a huge mass of dense rock around 2,900 kilometers underneath the continent of Africa. This seems to also disturb the generation of the magnetic field, propelling the drastic weakening. Furthermore, the tilt of Earth on its magnetic axis only heightens the impact of this. The way in which the large, low, shear velocity province impacts the South Atlantic anomaly was explained further by NASA Goddard geophysicist and mathematician Weijia Kwong, who said, "The observed SAA can also be interpreted as a consequence of weakening dominance of the dipole field in the region. We still have plenty to attempt to unravel about this strange occurrence, with some suggesting it is dividing and plenty of questions that remain unanswered. Nonetheless, this has been impacting our planet for many years and will continue to do so in the future, though we are yet to see how that will impact our space exploration. As we have continued observation and monitoring, our understanding, actions, and predictions will hopefully become more accurate and better informed." An asteroid barely missed Earth in November. Asteroid 2021 UA1. Asteroids are fascinating and many are absolutely zero cause for concern in terms of hitting or harming the Earth, but every once in a while there will be one or two which come in just a bit too close for NASA's liking. Small asteroids a few meters in size pass between the Earth and our Moon's orbit several times a month. Asteroids less than 1 meter in diameter hit the Earth's atmosphere and explore pretty much every day. With tens of thousands of small rocks passing through the atmosphere daily, mainly from Saturn's belt, this is no surprise to us, and none of these pose any threat to our safety here at home. Just a few months ago in November, an asteroid passed by Antarctica, missing the surface by a mere 1,800 miles, and scientists did not know about it until after the fact. Do not panic. Although it came scarily close and closer than any have in quite some time, for asteroids to be classed a threat they have to measure more than 460 feet in diameter, and this one, UA1, was just 6.6 feet. It would usually have been detected sooner than it was. Astronomers explained that it approached the Earth from its daytime side, in other words, from the direction of the Sun, meaning it essentially came hurtling from a blind spot in our observation abilities. Furthermore, being so small, it would have been hard to detect and track. In fact, many small asteroids pass near to Earth without us realizing, scientists say. Regardless, as said, owing to its small size, it never would have been a proper threat anyway. For context though, 1,800 miles is closer than most asteroids make it. Past the Earth at 625,000 miles, and this was one of the closest anticipated encounters for 2021. Similarly, the next 4 asteroids expected to come close to Earth, according to NASA's Asteroid Watch dashboard, will not come within 3 million miles of Earth. While it is shocking to think that an asteroid came so close to Earth without our prior knowledge, it's still reassuring to know that it was too small to have done any damage. And the next asteroid expected to actually collide with the Earth is thought to be some 300 years away, meaning we are all safe or no. Huge explosion in space explains mystery star. Previously unknown secrets of the Milky Way galaxy may have been revealed by a huge explosion about 10 times more energetic than a supernova. Astronomers from Australia's Arc Centre of Excellence in All-Sky Astrophysics in 3 Dimensions, or Astro 3D, may have discovered evidence of the destruction of a rapidly spinning star's collapse. This phenomenon is described as magnetorotational hypernova. This cataclysm that was previously unknown may be the reason that there is an unusually large presence of some materials in another Milky Way star. The star in question, SMSS, contains larger amounts of metal objects such as zinc compared to other stars the same age. The materials that are needed to produce these elements, neutron star mergers, do not explain their presence, but astronomers have another explanation for the high levels of neutrons. They suspect that only an extreme collapse of a young star, along with the presence of a rapid rotation and a strong magnetic field, can explain these extra neutrons. Although the star is deemed a metal-poor star because it has an extremely low iron to hydrogen ratio compared to the Sun, it also has large amounts of some heavier elements. That makes the star extremely rare. Now, rewinding us back to the beginning of the universe, the first stars were composed of almost only hydrogen and helium. After they collapsed and exploded, they produced heavier elements that were incorporated into the next stars in small amounts. The rates and energies of most of these collapsed stars also don't explain the number of heavy elements in SMSS J20032254114233. All this evidence points to one thing, according to Professor Chike Kobayashi from the University of Hertfordshire. The professor explained that this core collapse explosion of a strongly magnetized fast-spinning massive star indicates that there was a different kind of hypernova producing all stable elements in the periodic table at once. Although hypernova have been known of for decades, this discovery is the first time it has been mixed with strong magnetism and rapid rotation. According to astronomer Dr. David Young, it's an explosive end for the star. We calculate that 13 billion years ago, J20032541142033 formed out of a chemical soup that contained the remains of this type of hypernova. No one's ever found this phenomenon before. This discovery is a giant step towards finding an explanation for the formation of heavy elements in a young universe and is incredibly exciting for the field of astronomy. Even today, with all of our technology and knowledge, we are still uncovering amazing secrets about the universe around us. Hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe. The Milky Way galaxy is undoubtedly the most famous galaxy. Its existence brings on the question just how many galaxies exist. Counting galaxies, the vast collection of stars that populate our universe, seems like an impossible feat. The first deterrent is simply how many there may be. Once we get to counting multiple billions of galaxies, the maths gets a little tricky. Another deterrent to finding the real number are the limitations of our instruments. In order to get a good view of space, a telescope needs to have an aperture about the diameter of the primary lens, and to avoid distortion from Earth's air, it must be located above the atmosphere. Despite the difficulty of counting galaxies, scientists have not been deterred. An example of astronomers attempting a count is how they used an image made from the combination of 10 years from the Hubble Space Telescope called Hubble Extreme Deep Field, or XDF. The telescope focused on a patch of sky for 50 days of repeated visits. Through many hours of collecting faint light, the XDF was able to detect thousands of galaxies, making it the most in-depth image of the universe ever taken at the time. The Hubble Space Telescope had been an incredible source of information for astronomers in its 19 years of shuttle. In its 5th year, astronomers pointed the telescope at a region called Ursa Major, and in just 10 days of observations it found about 3,000 galaxies in one frame. Hubble was also pointed twice at a spot in the Fornax constellation and at a portion of the ultra-deep field. With each experiment, thousands of galaxies were detected, due to the sheer number of billion galaxies. However, some experts expect the number to increase to 200 billion once telescope technology improves. NASA spacecraft expected to find over 12,000 planets by 2024. Astronomers and scientists have been fascinated with the idea of other planets for decades, and new technologies have allowed us to discover, locate, and name thousands of planets that exist beyond our own solar system. And the search continues even now, with NASA's $287 million Exoplanet hunting spacecraft tests expected to discover 12,000 exoplanets by 2024. An exoplanet is any planet that exists outside of our solar system, and their existence has fascinated humans for years. Set into motion only a few short years ago, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite is a space telescope designed for the express purpose of finding these exoplanets spinning in our universe. The TESS mission is the most ambitious exoplanet discovery mission to date, covering 400 times the space that the Kepler mission covered. So far, TESS has discovered almost 5,000 planets, including everything from ice worlds to gas giants. TESS has also located numerous super-Earth planets with a mass higher than our Earth's but lower than that of Neptune and Uranus. TESS has 3 scheduled missions. And using data based on TESS's previous discoveries, researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology estimate that the spacecraft will discover thousands of other exoplanets. The total estimation comes to a whopping 12,500 planets that TESS is set to discover. And although the sheer number of planets is exciting, one of the most intriguing things about TESS's missions is that the spacecraft is likely to encounter numerous Earth-like exoplanets. That is, planets with a similar atmosphere and environment to our own. The research has not revealed anything yet. Some researchers are hopeful that TESS search will find the possibility of extraterrestrial life on these Earth-like exoplanets, such as alien microbes. But if learning, reading, and researching about outer space has taught us anything, it is how little we truly know in the scope of the universe. Despite centuries of studying and searching, we still know next to nothing about our celestial surrounding. Oldest planet, PSRB 162026b. As we talk about another cosmic being of an extremely old age, we come across the nickname Methuselah once again. This time, rather than the oldest star recorded, it is PSRB 162026b, known as Methuselah or the Genesis planet. An exoplanet, that is, a planet which orbits a star outside of our solar system. It is thought to be 12.7 billion years old. Having been formed about 1 billion years after the Big Bang and creation of the universe, NASA credits its survival as out of the ordinary. Orbiting a pair of deceased stars and also near a crowded cluster of over 100,000 stars, many other planets in this environment would have already been torn apart by surrounding gravitational forces. Not only is this Methuselah the oldest planet and a miraculous survivor, but it was also the first planet discovered to orbit 2 stars and also the first planet ever found in a globular star cluster. Being so old, PSRB 162026b is evidence that planets were in fact able to form rapidly after the universe's own birth, and suggests that there could be other planets which formed within the first billion years that we did not know to look for. On the flip side, with some of the youngest exoplanets recently discovered clocking in at a mere few million years old, the range of cosmic beings in our universe is truly vast and varied. With so much more to discover close to home, far from home, and everywhere in between, who knows what else is out there? Space is the ultimate unknown and will always fascinate us as humans on Earth. There is so much we cannot imagine and that we do not even know to look for, let alone that which we do not know of but confuses us, and the future of where and how our civilization might grow. Rare blasts remains discovered in Milky Way's center. Astronomers have recently found the remnants of a supernova at the center of our very own galaxy, the Milky Way. This remnant, titled Sagittarius A East, was discovered using NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory. Initially, astronomers classified this remnant as the remains of a massive star that exploded as a supernova. These kinds of explosions are not entirely uncommon, and so no one had trouble believing this conclusion. After analyzing the remnants even further, astronomers were able to conclude that this celestial object is the remains and byproduct of a totally different kind of supernova, the explosion of a white dwarf. White dwarfs are formed when stars such as our Sun have depleted all of their energy and become incredibly dense. To classify the type of supernova that created this celestial object, astronomers thought that it may have come from a type Ia supernova, which always send out the same amount of light despite their position in the universe. Since they are consistent in sending out light, these type Ia supernovae come in handy when trying to measure distances across the universe. After even further examination, scientists were able to conclude that this object was not the product of a type Ia supernova. Instead, it seems to be the product of a type IaX supernova. Like type Ia, these supernovae send out different amounts of light and have less powerful explosions. According to Dr. Ping Zhao of China's Nanjing University, scientists have found evidence of type IaX supernovae in other galaxies, but haven't identified evidence for one in the Milky Way until now. He also stated that this celestial in studying the ways in which white dwarfs explode. Xingqiu Lung of Caltech added that this result shows the diversity of types and causes of white dwarf explosions. If we're right about the identity of the supernova's remains, it would be the nearest known example to Earth. Scientists have postulated several theories trying to explain this celestial object, but this latest evidence suggests that all the previous theories have been wrong. Despite all that we know and have learned about outer space, this unknown celestial object floating in the Milky Way proves that we still have a lot to learn, even when it comes to our very own galaxy. China's U-2-2 rover beams back rugged images of the far side of the Moon. Moving on to a recent space discovery is how China's U-2-2 rover has returned images of its more than 3 years of travel across the far side of the Moon, known for its harsh environment. In these new images released by OurSpace, a Chinese channel affiliated with the China National Space Administration, scientists received insight into the rover's 3-year journey. The images show panoramic views of the far side of the Moon's surface that were previously unseen because the Moon's far side is not visible from Earth. Blocking visibility is the fact that the Moon is tidally locked with Earth. On top of these groundbreaking images, one of the biggest stories to come out of this mission was when the Chinese team operating U-2-2 reported the sighting of a hut-like structure that led many people to believe that the mysterious object could be a crashed ship or an alien object. However, by nearing the structure, the team concluded it was just another lunar boulder. Despite this disappointment, this mission has been an incredible feat of scientific brilliance. U-2-2 landed on the far side of the Moon in 2019 on top of the Chang'e 4 lander, making this pair the first spacecraft to land and operate on the hidden atmosphere of the Moon. According to data from China's Lunar Exploration Ground Application System, since landing the solar-powered U-22 has traveled more than 3,000 feet across the Von Karman crater. U-22 has made multiple discoveries during its mission, such as finding material that is potentially from underneath the Moon's crust, as well as glass spheres that were likely created by meteor impacts. U-22 and Chang'e lander have already surpassed their designed lifetimes of 3 months for U-22 and 1 year for Chang'e 4, making the mission even more of an incredible feat than originally expected. One of the reasons for this mission is because of the desire of many countries to reconquer the Moon. Many researchers hope to send humans to these regions in the near future, and they have been studying the far side of the Moon to make this hope a reality. Since the United States landed Apollo 11 on the Moon in 1969, people have been fascinated by what else we may be able to discover in outer space. As much as the moon landing was an incredible step for mankind, we have yet to really explore even a fraction of the lunar surface. Future missions will no doubt be exhilarating for all of humanity. The supernova could light up the Milky Way at any time. Perhaps the last time we had a close start to us explode was in the February of 1987. Its explosion was monumental, driving forth advancements in astrophysics and breaking the media worldwide. For us here on Earth, we saw a sudden bright light in the sky. Now, we have reason to believe that another supernova could follow suit sometime in the not-too-distant future. Researchers can assess the likelihood of this occurring from the neutrinos coming from the supernova. Masayuki Nakahata and Keiko Hirata spotted the evidence of this happening thanks to the Kamiokande 2 detector at the Kamioka Underground Observatory near Hida, Japan. The pair were the first to spot these fundamental particles coming from anywhere outside of our own solar system. Nakahata, who is now a physicist at the University of Tokyo, is the head of the world's largest neutrino experiment of its kind, known as Super Kamiokande. This system will allow the observatory's computers to see in almost real time when neutrinos are being detected so that an automated alert can be sent out to the conventional telescopes all around the world, making sure as many people are able to witness this event as possible. Alec Habak, an astrophysicist at the University of Minnesota, Duluth, said it's going to give everyone the wills. By giving astronomers worldwide the advance notice, everyone can be ready to catch this event. The early warning provided by Super Kamiokande means that plenty of telescopes can turn in many cases automatically towards the supernova. When the skies are lit up, we can expect it to be brighter than a full moon visible during the daytime and overwhelm the sensors in our telescopes, which are used to looking for hard-to-spot details. This is rare for us to observe a supernova up close, an event we do not often witness, and gives us a tremendous opportunity. Liquid-filled canyons on Titan. Another recent space discovery is how a team of researchers found that Saturn's largest moon, Titan, is full of deep, liquid hydrocarbon-filled canyons that make this large moon look almost like Earth. Titan is a cold and icy planet with rivers of methane, a far cry from our warm Earth that is filled with rivers of water. The research team has found that these canyons and channels on Titan form a network of rivers that they have named Vidflumina. These canyons are roughly half a mile wide and between 800 and 2,000 feet deep. Similar to how the Amazon River flows into the Atlantic, these rivers on Titan flow into its largest sea, Ligeia. While researchers know that these rivers are filled with liquid methane hydrocarbons, more researchers needed to fully understand how the rivers flow. These observations would not have been possible without the data collected in 2013 by NASA's Cassini spacecraft that studied the topography of Titan. Yet despite all of the information, scientists have been able to uncover most of the secrets of these canyons remain a mystery. Another mystery about these canyons is just how they were created. Scientists form on Earth due to erosion. This may not be the case on Titan though. It is also possible that geological activities facilitated the creation of the canyons, but again, scientists cannot be certain. According to Valeria Pagliarelli, the lead author of the research paper that describes Cassini's finding on Titan, it's likely that a combination of these forces contributed to the formation of the deep canyons, but at present it's not clear to what degree each was involved. What is clear is that any description of Titan's geological evolution needs to be able to explain how the canyons got there. Although scientists can theorize about the origins of Titan, there is still a lot to uncover. Adding more to the mysteries about this moon, scientists suspect Titan to be a potential area for alien life. They suspect this so much that there are plans for NASA to send an autonomous submarine to explore more of Titan. Despite the new data uncovered by the Cassini spacecraft, there is still much to learn about Titan, its canyons, and what they mean for humans on Earth as well as the universe itself. Out there beyond our skies, and even sometimes in our backyards, there are constant discoveries that uncover mysteries that were previously incomprehensible to us. New discoveries continue to force us out of our comfort zone and make it clear just how much more exploring needs to be done before we even begin to understand what is around us. Missing black hole with 10 billion solar masses. When it comes to space, there is one thing that we have all heard about: black holes. Books, movies, and TV love to feature this celestial phenomenon. Though our grasp of understanding is rather tenuous, it seems that a black hole exists. at the very center of each galaxy, drawing anything and everything into it with its unparalleled gravitational pull. As such, it seems that keeping track of black holes would be the easy part if they are so huge, monumental, and powerful. How could one go missing? Even so, that is exactly what happened with this black hole. About a decade ago, Dr. Mark Postman, a member of the Space Telescope Science Institute, was surveying surrounding galaxies with the famous Hubble Space Telescope. While surveying, Dr. Postman found a supergiant galaxy now referred to as A2261 BCG with no black hole at the center. Indeed, the finding was exceedingly strange. An expert of galactic nuclei at the National Optical Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory in Tucson, Arizona, Todd Lauer, added that the absence of the black hole was really unusual. According to everything we know about black holes, this supergiant galaxy must have one at its center. This black hole is expected to house 10 billion solar masses, while the black hole at the center of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, has only 4 billion. It seems impossible and unfathomable that a black hole of this size has simply evaded notice or attention. So what exactly is happening? Using the ideas postulated by 3 astronomers, Mitchell Begelman, Martin Rees, and Robert Blanford, one theory says that A2261 BCG originally had 2 black holes that eventually combined and turned into nothing. Of course, if the burst was unequal on both sides, the impact could have sent one of the black holes flying through the galaxy. However, after analyzing and surveying A2261 BCG even further, scientists found something interesting. The diffused core of the galaxy seems to house 4 little knots of light, causing some to think that the black hole's gravitational pull is keeping them there. Sarah Burks Ballard of West Virginia University led a surveying team with the hopes of untangling what the 4 knots could be. They found that 2 of them were most likely 2 smaller galaxies existing inside the main galaxy. Hubble was unable to provide enough details on the other 2 knots to reach a sound conclusion. Luckily, Hubble's successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, was launched in late 2021. Astronomers are hopeful that a telescope of this power and magnitude will be able to describe the 4 knots in detail and tell us the location of the missing black hole. Despite how improbable it seems that a black hole housing 10 billion solar masses could evade detection for so long, it just goes to show that outer space holds more mysteries than we ever thought. NASA spacecraft finds crash site of Indian Lunarlander. Despite being lost for months, NASA was able to find pieces of a small Indian spacecraft called Vikram that India attempted to land on the moon in September of 2019. If Vikram, a part of India's Chandrayaan-2 mission to the moon, had been able to reach the surface of the moon without crashing, India would have been only the 4th country to put a lander on the moon. Unfortunately, Vikram diverted from its planned descent trajectory and crashed. Despite claiming to have located the lunar lander the day after the crash, India never published images of the landing site. While the NASA spacecraft, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, passed over the mission's landing site multiple times after the crash, finding the impact scar proved challenging. NASA scientists have noted that it is possible Vikram was hiding in the shadows. The crash reignited interest in the moon for many people, including Shanmugha Subramanian, an Indian computer programmer and mechanical engineer. He noted, "The crash landing of Vikram rekindled an interest in the moon not only for me and others also. I think even if Vikram had landed and sent some images, we would have never had such interest. For the first few days I was scanning the images randomly and there were a lot of false positives." In his free time, Subramanian took an active part in the search for Vikram's crash site and took into account the last known velocity and position of the spacecraft to determine where he should have been looking. After scouring the moon's surface, he was able to detect a white speck about 2/3 of a mile from Vikram's planned landing site. Amazingly, Subramanian reported his finding to NASA scientists on Twitter, who confirmed his discovery and began searching the surrounding site. They found the landing point was about 2,500 feet from the piece of debris Subramanian had spotted. One of the most fascinating aspects of this story is the fact that Shanmugha Subramanian, a computer programmer, was credited by NASA for finding the Vikram lander on the moon's surface. This tells us that with the amount of information now available on the internet, regular people can make discoveries from the comfort of their own homes that even NASA cannot. This is something that was never possible before. Scientists think they have detected radio emissions from an exoplanet. Searching for and investigating found exoplanets is becoming an increasingly prominent aspect of astronomical research. Exoplanets are planets that, just like those in our solar system, orbit a star. Though they orbit a star other than our Sun and lie a little further away. Scientists believe that if they find an exoplanet like Earth, not only will we be able to confirm that we do indeed understand the processes of formation and interaction within and across planets, but we might go one step further and find habitable environments and other life forms. All the research conducted is invaluable. So far, the search for exoplanets has been led by TESS, NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, which has found more than referred to as candidate exoplanets. Scientists then follow up, and from this 159 exoplanets that were found by TESS have been confirmed. Now new research is on its way to try and alleviate some of TESS's pressures, delving further into exoplanet research. In the Netherlands, a research team has used a radio telescope to examine 3 of the stars we know are orbited by exoplanets, also known as host stars. The team has compared their observations of host stars to observations of Jupiter when they reframed to look as though it was seen from a star system plenty of light years away. From these observations, there was one star system, Tauborts, that was the most notable in result. We have confirmed there is one exoplanet in Tauborts already, though this does not mean there aren't more awaiting discovery. That there are ways to detect exoplanets through radio waves for the first time. If this proves to be successful and accurate, then there is the potential to understand the impact of magnetic fields in exoplanets and, by extension, understand more about exoplanets themselves. Jake Turner, an astronomer at Cornell University and lead author of the research project, said, "We present one of the first hints of detecting an exoplanet in the radio realm." He continues to explain, their current hypothesis is that the radio emissions were coming from the planet itself, not any other nearby celestial objects. He explains that to have come to this conclusion, the team had considered the strength and polarization of the radio signal and the planet's magnetic field, and that all these measurements fall in line with theoretical predictions. Despite this being the current theory, the team cannot be sure the source of the radio wave just yet. More research, more observations, and more data is necessary to determine if the team's hypothesis is indeed true. The planet, named Tauborts b, is in the Tauborts star system and can be found in, you guessed it, the Borts constellation when viewed from Earth. So the new wave of research kicked off, starting from Jupiter. The team began by measuring the radio emissions from the gas giant in our own solar system and then adjusted the measurements based on distance from the host star and the distance from Earth to make the same template fit the measurements for Tauborts b, the exoplanet in question. The team were not done here. The researchers employed the low-frequency array in the Netherlands to combine the data with that of the possible signal from Tauborts b. Researchers have used this to see if other signals have come through too. Lofer managed to trace the possible Tauborts b signal, but also several from nearby stars. It's important that we aim to understand what we can about the radio waves on exoplanets. We know that magnetic fields can play a role in the forming of conditions on the planet, such as Earth's protecting the atmosphere. This is vital information, but looking directly for it is difficult at best, and so radio emissions can give us hints and tips to help crack the code with a little more ease and certainty. So, if this research team has found an exoplanet radio emissions, not only does this mean we can employ other technologies alongside tests, but it also means we can uncover more about the magnetic field influencing the climates and conditions of these planets. There is still a great deal of uncertainty and a lot more research needed. After all, it might not even be the exoplanet producing these signals as it is. Mysterious heartbeat detected coming from cosmic gas cloud. A heartbeat is of course what keeps us all alive, animals and humans alike. Throughout the natural world, we show we are in tune with one another, with our surroundings and with ourselves through the rate of our heart. This brilliant phenomenon is now being used as an analogy describing the synchronized pulses of a strange cloud of gas and a black hole way up in outer space. Is there some form of intrinsic connection between the two? What is causing this strange heartbeat to occur at all? Scientists have discovered that a cosmic gas cloud seems to have a heartbeat in which it is emitting a gamma ray that is yet to be explained. A statement released from the DESI National Research Center in Germany reported how an international team of astronomers made use of data obtained from the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico alongside measurements gathered from NASA's Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope. From this information, the research began to take off, having pinpointed whereabouts the gas cloud was. It can be found in the constellation Aquila, more colloquially known as the Eagle. This gas cloud is pulsing or seemingly beating to the same rhythm at the same time in complete synchronicity with a black hole. This black hole sits 100 light-years away, leading the researchers to believe there is some form of link or connection between the two celestial objects. A quasar is the brightest thing we know to exist within our universe. A microquasar is, as the name would suggest, a small version of this. Typically, they consist of a large black hole bringing the huge source of light as it engulfs stellar objects surrounding them. Forms one aspect of a microquasar system called SS433. Also part of SS433 is a star 30 times the mass of our Sun. This star and black hole orbit one another within the microquasar system, with the black hole gradually taking in matter from the huge star. This constant pulling of matter ends up with a disk forming around the black hole. Jian Li, the lead author of the study this international research team conducted, said that this material accumulates in an accretion disk before falling back into the black hole like water in the whirl above the drain of a bathtub. He goes on to explain that some of the matter does not fall down the so-called drain that is the black hole, but rather it is launched at a high speed as two narrow jets from one another in opposite directions, one above and one below the accretion disk. This jet is made up of particles moving at incredibly high speeds, combined with strong magnetic fields. These jets cause X-rays and gamma rays to be emitted, both of which were then detected by the Fermi Space Telescope. Researchers have explained that the jets shoot out into space along an uneven path, spiraling instead of firing in a straight linear direction. This is thought to be a result of the accretion disk wobbling as it rotated. The microquasar sways over a 162-day period, mirroring the behavior found in the data gathered for the gamma ray that was leaving the gas cloud with a heartbeat. The research team suggested the cloud, named Fermi J1913-0515, had a heartbeat as a result of the microquasar, and that this SS433 system may be what was powering the rhythmic beating. The one thing that is still baffling researchers is how there is an influence upon the microquasar from so far away. This puts a significant amount of space in between the black hole and the gas cloud. Researchers, although they have made this connection, are unclear how the two items have become intertwined in such a manner. Lee described the link as an unambiguous connection via timing, though explains that despite the somewhat irrefutable relation, we still have no idea exactly why this link is present. More observations and research are needed to begin to decode this mystery, though for now this is just one more thing we do not quite understand about black holes. NASA found strange radio signal coming from Venus. Even though scientists are always on the lookout for strange or seemingly inexplicable phenomena when venturing through space, when they do encounter odd or mysterious happenings, they are frequently not at all what they expect to find. Recently, NASA's Parker Solar Probe entered the upper atmosphere of Earth's neighbor Venus in order to collect data about the planet, and the probe detected odd radio signals coming from the atmosphere. And while those of us unfamiliar with inner workings of space might immediately jump to the conclusion that these could be signals from an alien race living on the planet, the true meaning is something altogether more exciting. At least for scientists studying space, that is. These radio signals that were detected are naturally occurring within the atmosphere of Venus and indicate that the Parker Solar Probe, flying over 830 kilometers above the planet, had entered the outer atmosphere, specifically an upper layer known as the ionosphere. Remarkably, the last time that anyone had been able to detect radio readings from Venus' upper atmosphere was almost 30 years ago in 1992, which means that this new data will be able to give researchers valuable insight into the changes that have occurred on the planet in the intervening years. This is especially valuable as the unforgiving heat of Venus' atmosphere makes the planet incredibly hard to explore and study. And what did the researchers discover about the planet that was different than in 1992? For starters, the atmosphere appears to be much thinner than the last time that data was gathered. Researchers believe that this is due to the fact that the Sun's magnetic poles mysteriously swap places every 11 years as a result of the star's solar cycles. Before the magnetic poles switch, the Sun's magnetic field weakens and then flares back to its maximum strength before fading again into the next switch. Because the earlier 1992 measurement was taken during a time in the solar cycle when the magnetic field was close to the maximum, and the current reading is while we are approaching the solar minimum. Scientists hypothesize that the ionosphere of Venus is changing with the solar cycle and may be greatly influenced by the Sun's magnetic fields. Although why this is happening is unclear, scientists hope that future data gathered from the planet will help to clue them in. So why is this radio wave analysis of Venus important? Researchers are very interested in discovering more about our sister planet, as the composition and size is remarkably similar to our own. However, there are several marked differences that make Venus totally inhospitable for all possible life forms. Digging into these differences and how Venus was able to become so different from our lively, flourishing planet has always been very interesting to scientists. But the aforementioned atmosphere and 462 degrees Celsius temperature makes it incredibly difficult to get close enough to gather data, and landing anything on the planet is entirely out of the question. Currently, these brief snippets of information in the form of mysterious natural radio waves are all that researchers have to go on when attempting to unravel the mystery of Venus, and they consider themselves very lucky to have the small amount of information at all. Hopefully, future excursions like the one with the Parker Solar Probe can have similarly, which can add to the research and knowledge surrounding the mysterious planet Venus. South Africa's Mircat radio telescope just discovered 1,300 galaxies. The South African Mircat radio telescope is a true work of wonder. Utilizing a mere quarter of its possible power, it managed to discover a shocking 1,300 brand new galaxies in a spot where a mere handful of 70 were officially verified prior to this discovery. The Mircat has 16 satellite dishes which, using its 64 receptors, is expected to someday soon become the most powerful radio telescope on Earth. The Mircat's chief scientist, Dr. Fernando Camillo, stated they are far better than we could have expected. This means that this telescope, as is today only 1/4 of the way to its full contingent, is already the best radio telescope in the southern hemisphere. This means great things for the future of galactic discoveries, especially since throughout this decade the SCAR have made plans of placing 3,000 dishes across an entire square kilometer in various countries to give researchers even more amazing images of outer space. The potential for discovery brought about by this is immense. Some scientists estimate that the potential of what we could find will be raised by upwards of 10,000 times that of which we know now. Black holes, dark matter, energy, supernovas, galaxies, we might be able to, for the first time, gain a full vision of what our universe is composed of and what it is like up close, and maybe even uncover more about its origins tens of billions of years ago. The Mircat's isolated location in South Africa's Karoo region allows for the best conditions to search the stars without much light pollution. Another radio telescope connected to the Mircat is planned on being built in Australia sometime within the coming days. Nenadi Pander, the South African Minister of Science and Technology, stated, "This is the first time that an African group of countries will host global science infrastructure of this character. It's a first for us as Africa, and also it's a first for the world because the world hasn't done this in Africa. We are building a global infrastructure for the world." Furthermore, Pander announced his belief that theirs would be the greatest telescope in the world. More than 20 countries are participating in the creation of the dishes. SCAR managed to raise and invest $205 million into their telescope research and development, most of which has been primarily funded by the curious public and fellow scientists who wish to see the project flourish and thrive. Astronomers discover spider stars that tear apart other stars. There are plenty of different kinds of stars out there. From the complex life cycle each star goes through to the different ways we categorize them, the pretty, twinkly stars above us have a lot more to them than it seems. However, a team of researchers from across the globe seem to have uncovered what is being described as a spider star, and it is not exactly friendly. These stars are highly energetic. Their pulses and patterns of activity in the sky are regular, meaning they are distinctive in observations, making them stand out and catch the eyes and attention of astronomers worldwide. Stars have a complex life cycle, so let's give it a quick recap. After a supernova, a supergiant star collapses in on itself, leaving behind either a neutron star or a white dwarf. These are both incredibly dense leftovers. Now the interesting part is that when there is a high enough amount of electromagnetic radiation, the star can spin at a rapid pace, resulting in a pulsar. Pulsars have strong magnetic fields and regularly release radiation with each pulse that takes place. The regular bursts that come from these pulsars are quite convenient for our eagle-eyed astronomers. The researchers can keep an eye on these unusual stars by observing the cosmic ray outbursts released every time the star rotates. The regularity makes for even predictable data, so much so that some have suggested making some form of celestial GPS based off of these pulsars. Some pulsars are even more unique. The best, or rather strangest, of these stars have a rotation every 30 milliseconds or less. Pulsars that rotate with such a rapid speed are called spider stars. Spider stars do not sound overly cute or pretty, and they seem to live up to their name. These spider stars are usually found in binary systems, meaning systems where two stars are bound together through gravity and orbit one another. When one of these stars is a spider-style pulsar star, unfortunately for that star's buddy, the companion star is typically broken down by the activity of the pulsar. The proximity to one another means the spider star can easily tear apart its partner in their binary system. A complete destruction of its partner earned the spider stars the violent nickname Black Widow stars, a nod to the female spiders who eat their male partner after having mated. Another subcategory of spider stars is the redback, which eclipse signals when the companion star in the binary signal moves in between the pulsar and the Earth. From an international astronomy team describing the discovery of 8 binary millisecond pulsars. The team managed to spot these stars using the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. There are 8 pulsars that have been uncovered. 3 of these stars are black widows, 1 is a redback, and 1 pulsar cannot be classified at all, falling in between the 2 known subcategories. Could this middle-sized pulsar be an indicator of something completely different that we are missing? Could we be right on the edge of discovering something new altogether? Only more research will tell us. HD 164595 HD 164595 is a star in the Hercules constellation that is strikingly similar to our Sun. The 2 stars are both classified as Class G stars due to their size and characteristics, and while our Sun obviously has numerous planets orbiting in its fiery gravitational pull, it appears that HD 164595 only has 1 planet, which makes a complete orbit every 40 days. Any time that a star and planet combination appear to resemble the characteristics of our own. A scientific organization known as SETI, or the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, carefully observes it as a possible location of life beyond our solar system. And while stars of this nature and their respective planets generally just continue as they always have without giving SETI much to go on, HD 164595 is a little different. The star made headlines and raised the proverbial antennae of alien life watches in 2016, when a very strong signal was detected coming from that region. The signal, which traveled the 94 light-years between the Earth and the star, was still incredibly strong when it reached a Russian telescope trained on the star. An international team of researchers and astronomers immediately banded together to study the star further and attempt to determine what could have caused the signal and if it could mean that the planet-star duo housed extraterrestrial life forms. Douglas Vakosh, an astronomer who is heavily involved in the study of the potential for alien life, said in an interview with CNN that the signal from HD 164595 is intriguing because it comes from the vicinity of a sun-like star, and if it's artificial, its strength is great enough that it was clearly made by a civilization with capabilities beyond those of humankind. While it is hard to imagine a civilization that is dozens and dozens of times more advanced than we are, the truth is that it's highly likely that this could be the case, as our own technologies would not be able to generate a signal of the strength seen emanating from HD 164595. However, researchers do wonder if it is indeed a signal generated by alien life forms. Why would they be targeting our solar system? Some suggest that we might be just as much of a mystery to them as they are to us. Since our own signals would not reach them, it is possible that they do not know we are even here in the first place. And while the implications of the signal being artificial are huge, experts and SETI researchers do admit that the chances of this being a call from aliens is very slim. Without corroboration from an independent observatory, a putative signal from extraterrestrials doesn't have a lot of credibility, admitted Vakosh. The greatest limitation is that it hasn't been replicated. Before we can give any credence to a signal as coming from extraterrestrials, we need to see it repeatedly to make sure it wasn't just a transient phenomenon. And while the SETI researchers hold out hope that the signal comes again, or the alien life forms reach out or signal in another way, the unsettling fact is that our own technologies are not advanced enough to answer the question of extraterrestrial life once and for all. If aliens do exist somewhere out there, then they are going to have to come to us, and if the signal truly was just a fluke, never to be repeated, it will likely go into the records as just another inexplicable element of space, creating one more unsolved mystery. Curiosity rover captures tiny mineral flower on Mars. We have carried out a lot of research into understanding the places around us in space, and the red planet is no exception. Life on Mars is a thrilling concept we have spent decades looking for. Unfortunately, this is not what scientists have stumbled across, despite initial thoughts. This discovery is exciting nonetheless and certainly worth making note of. Curiosity rover, one of NASA's rovers on Mars, captured a photograph on the 25th of February 2022 showing us a beautiful, detailed photograph of what looked like a tiny flower on Mars' surface. In reality, the dainty 1 centimeter wide flower is a mineral deposit despite its striking resemblance to a coral or a sponge. Though Curiosity took this shot near Aeolis Mons, sometimes better known as Mount Sharp, during Gale Crater, which spans 154 kilometers, these little mineral flowers are scattered and somewhat common all throughout Mars. This floral-shaped rock has been named the Blackthorn Salt. It's a diagenetic feature which, according to Abigail Freeman, a planetary scientist and the deputy project scientist for the Curiosity rover, means that it was created from minerals in the rainwater that was once on Mars, having previously mixed with Martian rock, back when Mars had liquid water. Essentially, these minerals are formed through a combination of rock types brought together thanks to the rain. She explained that there are diagenetic features around Mars that show up in a similar size to this, though they don't always have the dendritic, branch-like flowered shape form that the blackthorn salt does. Sometimes, Freeman reports, they can be a little more rounded or even spherical. Today, almost all of the water on Mars is solid, frozen, and exists as ice, with small amounts lingering in the atmosphere as vapor. Though we already have established, and it's a largely accepted notion, that in the early history of the red planet there were large amounts of liquid water. This hypothesis has been presented due to the evidence we can see through rocks and minerals like the processes outlined by Freeman in this research. This isn't the first time that dendritic diagenetic shapes have been observed on Mars. Though this photograph taken by Curiosity does feature a particularly stunning shape, Curiosity has stumbled across several diagenetic features within Gale Crater itself. It's important that we keep tabs on and continue to explore, research, document, and discover new diagenetic features such as the blackthorn salt, since it can help us place a timeline to try and learn when the liquid water seemingly disappeared from Mars. We can learn about the history of the planet and when, if and how long for the planet could have potentially been habitable for life. We continue to search further into space for life, though it seems that even much closer to home there is a real possibility that life once existed. ESA Huygens probe landed on Saturn's moon Titan. Roughly 17 years ago on January 14, 2005, the Huygens probe landed on Saturn's moon Titan. Since 2005, Huygens has provided scientists with data to help them better understand this one-of-a-kind planet. The Huygens probe landing was the farthest any probe had traveled before. After traveling through space for over 7 years, it also became the first to land in the outer solar system. The Huygens probe weighed roughly 700 pounds and was shaped like a shellfish with a hard protective outer shell. The probe had the ability to measure many aspects of Titan's surface, including its physical and electrical properties, wind speed, radiation levels, and the chemical gases that are present. The probe also had the ability to take photos of the surface. Carolyn Porco wrote, "I distinctly recall the dreamy feeling of being in one universe one moment and in another universe the next. But it was no dream. We had, without doubt, journeyed to Titan, 10 times farther from the sun than the Earth, and touched it. The solar system suddenly seemed a very much smaller place. The images returned to the European Space Agency included photos of an apparent shoreline, including breaks in the Earth carved by some sort of flowing liquid. There was also evidence that supports the idea of an underground ocean of water and ammonia deep beneath an icy crust. One of the reasons scientists are interested in researching the surface of Titan is because of the presence of chemicals that are believed to have been present on a young Earth. Nitrogen and methane were both found in the atmosphere. The methane element is interesting because methane's lifespan in Titan's atmosphere is only tens of millions of years, meaning the methane must somehow be replenished throughout time. There were changes with the Huygens probe. These changes are helping scientists perfect probe design as we continue to explore space. The first problem the ESA encountered was the spin direction of the probe. After an unexpected flip in the spacecraft's spin, it descended onto Titan more quickly than anticipated. The spin direction and speed were essential to scientists because any alterations could affect the spacecraft's ability to stabilize for landing. The ESA explained, luckily, the magnitude of this reversed spin was similar to that expected by the researchers, meaning that the unexpected flip affected the timing of the planned observations but did not dramatically affect their quality. Unfortunately, there was also an issue with the programming sequence that meant about 350 images Huygens took were never sent back to Earth. Not only did Huygens provide scientists with imperative data about Saturn's moon Titan, but 17 years later the data acquired during Huygens' journey is still helping spacecraft designers create. On October 8, 1976, Teresa Lynn Gibson, also known as Trenny, went on a field trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She traveled with 35 to 40 of her classmates from Bearden High School in Knoxville, Tennessee. Despite being surrounded with a group and other hikers, 16-year-old Trenny mysteriously disappeared from the park. The field trip was odd to begin with. There were almost 40 students, yet only one teacher to supervise them, plus the bus driver. According to some students, they were not even informed of their field trip destination until they arrived at the park. Only then did they find out that they would be hiking about 1.8 miles from Clingman's Dome to Andrews Bald and then returning to the Forney Ridge Trail. When students began their hike, they split up into smaller groups based on their walking speed. Throughout the day, Trenny walked at different paces with various groups of classmates. Mysteriously vanished. She was last seen by classmates near Clingman's Dome at 3 p.m. They were hiking along a fairly steep trail with thick vegetation and sudden drop-offs. Apparently, she glimpsed something on the right side of the trail and left the path. That was the last time anyone saw her. Rescue teams began searching for her in the late afternoon. The weather and fall foliage made it difficult for search and rescue to use helicopters, and instead they used tracking dogs to pick up her scent. There were around 6 teams of bloodhounds and German shepherds that searched and picked up her scent near the juncture of the Clingman's Dome Trail and the Appalachian Trail. They followed her scent past Clingman's Dome Tower up until 1.5 miles from a newfound gap. The scent then disappeared along the roadside. Multiple theories have arisen and suspects investigated. Some believe Trenny was in Clingman's Dome Observation Tower while the initial search was being conducted because it was never inspected. Once the searches left, she traveled to the roadside where she got into a car, either voluntarily or against her will. There are some reports of cigarettes and beer cans found along the roadside. Trenny's classmate, Robert Simpson, was implicated as a suspect since her hairbrush was discovered in his car, but police quickly dismissed the idea. Trenny's parents, Robert and Hope Gibson, informed the police of a previous break-in by a young man who Mrs. Gibson shot at. After being shot, he threatened to hurt their daughter. Although the authorities investigated this man, there were no leads for them to follow. Searches were conducted extensively through October and then again from April 18th to May 5th, 1977, but to no avail. Searches resumed in 1981 as well, but they never found anything. Kim Pouncey, a friend of Trenny's, gave an interview in November 2017 for an episode of Appalachian Unsolved where she expressed her doubt of an abduction. She believes Trenny left of her own accord and had someone waiting for her in the park, that she had planned it because she wanted to leave and get away. After so many searches, the rangers of the national park were convinced that she was not in the park. Her body was never found. There are no current suspects, leads, or evidence. It's strange that a young girl could vanish while on a popular trail in the middle of the day surrounded by people. Whether she orchestrated her own disappearance or was kidnapped will remain a mystery. Christy Lynn Vorak was living with a foster family in 1982 when on Halloween of the year she went missing. There was a reported sighting of her at a bus stop that evening in Seattle, Washington, but investigators were unable to confirm whether it was actually her. Vorak was a 13-year-old white female at the time of her disappearance. She was described as being 5 feet 3 inches and 110 pounds with brown hair and hazel eyes. In order to assist with finding her, age progression photographs were created to attempt to visualize what she might look at ages 29 and 43 if she was still alive. A distinguishing feature that was noted was the middle finger on her left hand, which was shorter than the rest as a result of a birth defect. Vorak's mother still believed her to be alive, although authorities were not convinced of this. It was believed instead that she may have been a victim of Gary Ridgway, also known as Green River, although this too was never confirmed. This is thought to be questionable as, unlike Ridgway's other victims, she was younger and not known to be a runaway. The The only evidence that may have linked Vorik to the Green River is that she apparently roamed around the streets of Tacoma, near the area where many other young women were taken advantage of and where many lives were taken. Vorik was added to the list of his victims in May of 1993. This case, like the first two, also remains unsolved. One can only hope that both Song and Vorik are somewhere safe and will be discovered eventually and return home to their families and friends. We can only hope that the perpetrators are discovered and brought to justice so that their families and friends can find resolution and peace. The mystery of the Marlborough. It is not uncommon for ships to be tossed to pieces at the mercy of violent storms brewing in the deep sea or spit onto unseen coral reefs and shredded by the underlying rocks. Occasionally, a ship will simply disappear and leave the family members of her crew to wonder at its fate. This appeared to be the case with the Marlborough, which was a large, iron merchant ship that went missing in 1890 after setting sail from New Zealand in January, on its way to bring wool and frozen meats to London. In those days, it took many months to make the treacherous passage across open seas. Occasionally, the ship would fall prey to the submerged icebergs hidden off the coast of Cape Horn or some other dangerous hazard lurking in the open sea and would never be seen again. So when the Marlborough still had not arrived at port in April, it was assumed lost at sea, not an uncommon fate for merchant ships at the time. The case became instantly more mysterious when the Marlborough turned up again 23 years later in 1913 off the coast of Cape Horn, with the skeletons of her crew scattered curiously all over her deck. The reports of the sailors who found the remains of the ship reported that about 20 skeletons were found on board and in a lot of different locations. One was found alone, directly under the wheel, and another one found alone on the bridge, with 5 more nearby. No less than 3 skeletons were found by the ladder leading below the deck. The largest group found in a single area consisted of 10 skeletons in what is known as the mess room, the main social quarters of the ship. The most mysterious part of the discovery of what remains of the Marlborough was the placement of the skeletons. Because they were scattered throughout the ship as though going through their normal operating routines, they must have all passed away abruptly from the same thing and all at the same time. The bodies in the hatchway suggest that they may have been running from something, although the other bodies throughout the ship were all out being rounded up by pirates and dying. Additionally, what was presumably the captain was found under the steering wheel as though he passed away while trying to direct the ship, which would be an odd priority if your crewmates were losing their lives. Although the mystery of the Marlborough has riddled minds since its discovery in 1913 and the ship was thoroughly searched for clues at the time of its discovery, we will likely never know the circumstances that led to this unusual placement of bodies throughout the ship. George Penker. Yosemite National Park is famous for its amazing waterfalls, deep valleys, and ancient sycamore trees. Located in the Sierra Nevada mountains in central California, the park draws 4 million visitors every single year. On Friday, June the 17th, 2011, 80 people from a church in Hawthorne, California, were visiting the park. 20 of them, including 30-year-old George Penker, to Upper Yosemite Falls. The hike to Upper Yosemite Falls offers fantastic views on its way to the view of the tallest waterfall in the United States. The trail is somewhat strenuous, with a steep fall to one side. Although the trail is not the easiest, it is said the payoff at the top is worth it. Once at the top, the group disbanded to allow everyone a chance to explore and return to the trailhead at their leisure. Penker's friends assume he had taken the trail back down alone and therefore did not report him missing until 9 p.m. Penker was last seen wearing gray sweatpants with white stripes, a black t-shirt that says DMB, along with a blue cloth bag. Searches for Penker started almost immediately, with full-fledged searches beginning the following morning. In all, 105 people, a helicopter, and 6 dogs were all involved in the search. Fellow churchgoers stated that Penker was in good spirits on the whole trail and seemed to make the hike without much trouble, though no one could pinpoint where they saw him last. The National Park Service website states the following about the trails. Do not stray off of the maintained path, as you will find steep drops adjacent to the trail. The upper half of the trail is steep and rocky, but the arduous climb is well worth the amazing views you will be rewarded with at the top. It is easy to believe Penker found himself off the trail, resulting in a quick fall to his assumed death. Due to the dangerous conditions and the lack of any evidence tied to Penker, searches were scaled back for the safety of those searching. Sadly, in all the years searching for Penker, not a shred of evidence has turned up, not a piece of clothing nor his blue bag. It is still widely believed Penker perished just off the trail, again proving that although beautiful, you are not careful. Thousands of people have gone missing in national parks. Due to how vast they are, the majority of these individuals are never found. This has caused various people to put forward different theories to explain their disappearances. What's worrying is that this number seems to be on the increase, something that national park workers can't explain. Sadly, thousands of people are reported missing every single day. While the majority of missing person cases get resolved, there's still a large number of people that are never seen again. Lars Mittank's last minutes may be captured in the most popular YouTube video featuring a missing person. Mittank's story begins in Golden Sands, Bulgaria on July 6, 2014. He had spent the week vacationing at the seaside resort with a group of friends. On this day, after arguing over soccer, Mittank got into an altercation with 4 men, resulting in a ruptured eardrum and possible concussion. Due to the injury, a doctor advised him not to fly and prescribed him the antibiotic cefuroxime before referring him to a hospital. Although his friends said they would stay with him, Mittank insisted that he was fine and they could return home without him. A friend later stated he seemed to be in a good mood when they left. His friends went on their way and Mittank checked himself into a cheap hotel called Hotel Color. He was only on his own a day before his strange behavior was captured on the hotel's security cameras. The footage revealed him pacing the halls and hiding in an elevator. He quickly became paranoid and in a panicked call home to his mother, he whispered that 4 men were coming to kill him. He then advised her to cancel his credit cards. CCTV last captured Mittank in Varna Airport. The video shows him entering the airport with his luggage before walking out of sight. Mittank is seen again, leaving his luggage behind. He is seen sprinting through the airport as if he is running for his life. He pushes through the doors of the airport and continues to run through the parking lot. The last shots of Mittank show him scaling a fence close to a wooded area. Airport Dr. Kostya Koskov later described Mittank as nervous and erratic. He claimed Mittank began to tremble when seeing a construction worker and was noted saying, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." His belongings, including a backpack and suitcase, were later recovered at the airport. Its contents revealed nothing about his disappearance, however. Mittank was never seen again. Iwona Wizarek. It was the 17th of July, 2010 in Spot, Poland. In the early morning light, 19-year-old Iwona Wizarek makes a final call to her friend, Adria. Earlier that night, the girls were out celebrating their completion of high school, attending a party not far from their home. Adria convinced Iwona to leave and continue their partying at a nearby nightclub, Dream Club. Not long after midnight, arrived at the club, along with 3 of Adria's male friends, Paul, Adrian, and Mark. After an argument with the men, Yvonne stormed out, determined to walk the almost 4 miles home. Texts from her phone indicate she was angry her friend did not follow her out of the club after the argument. There were several calls made to Adria. The last one occurred at around 4 a.m. in which Adria had apologized for the incident at the club. Ivona confessed she wasn't in a state to be seen at home, still drunk from all the partying. Adria informed Ivona she would leave her keys outside of her apartment if she wanted to come to stay with her. CCTV easily tracked Ivona's path, having been seen on several different cameras. Barefoot and alone, she headed towards the neighborhood that she and Adria lived in. Needless to say, Ivona never arrived. After awakening and finding her keys where she had left them, Adria contacted Ivona's family to check that she had made it home. Although she was reported missing, authorities claimed Ivona was capable enough to make it home and could have stayed at another friend's house. It was a week before the disappearance of Ivona was taken seriously. During the last few seconds of the video captured of Ivona, a man was seen walking behind her. He was possibly the last known person to see her alive. Even though his picture and sketches were widely circulated, no one ever stepped forward claiming to be the man, and he was never identified. In 2014, Adria and one of the men from the club were interviewed regarding the disappearance. Although both of them corroborated the time Ivona left the club, neither of them could maintain eye contact with the camera. And though they seemed to remember the time of her leaving, not one of them could remember what the argument was about. This strange behavior has led some to believe that perhaps Adria and the men know more about her disappearance than they were telling. In Poland, Ivona's disappearance has not faded away. Some 12,000 pages on a forum remain active, searching for Ivona, sharing pictures of her and asking for someone to step forward. Some fear she has been sold into human trafficking. Even with hundreds of people from the area interviewed, no sign of Ivona has ever turned up. Carol A. Deering. The Carol A. Deering was built in Maine in 1919. It It was the last ship to be ever made by G.G. Deering Company, and it was designed to carry large amounts of coal. On August 22, 1920, the ship set sail to Rio de Janeiro with Captain William H. Merritt, his son Sewell, and a 10-man crew. A few days into the trip, Captain Merritt became very ill. They made a stop in Lewes, Delaware, so the captain and his son could get off, and they were replaced with Captain Willis B. Warmell and Charles McClellan. They made their way to Brazil and delivered the coal without any problems. While in Brazil, Captain Warmell visited another captain and told him he didn't trust the crew on the Deering. He had many concerns with them and he only trusted the engineer Herbert Bates. When the ship reached Barbados, Captain Warmell spoke with yet another captain about how troubling his crew had been, especially McClellan, who treated the rest of the crew badly. The captain he spoke with, along with 2 others, heard McClellan say that he would get Captain Warmell before they made it to Norfolk. While sailing through a storm off Cape Thea, the ship lost its anchors and chains. On January 29, 1921, the Deering came to the Cape Lookout lightship and tried to radio for help, but the radio at the lightship was out. Thomas Jacobson, the lightship's keeper, said someone tried using a megaphone since the radio was out, but the man had broken speech and didn't seem to act like an officer. He also said the crew was going around on the quarterdeck where crewmen usually weren't allowed to be, and they also seemed confused. 2 days later, C.P. Brady spotted the Deering from the Cape Hatteras Coast Guard station. The ship was stuck with its sails still set on the edge of Diamond Shoals. Due to bad weather, rescue ships couldn't get near it until February 4th. By the time the rescue crew got to the ship, it was taking on water and had been abandoned. Strangely, almost everything inside the Deering was damaged, but it didn't seem to have happened completely by accident. It appeared that the binnacle box had been forced open and broken with a sledgehammer found nearby. The ship was missing various things such as navigation equipment, life rafts, and the crew's personal items. They also found food left on the stove, leading them to believe they were preparing food at the time the ship was abandoned. The Deering was damaged beyond repair and was destroyed. The government launched an investigation to find out what happened, but no official conclusion could be made. The ship had been sailing away from any bad weather and there was no evidence of piracy. Many believed there may have been a mutiny, which would explain the man Thomas Jacobson saw trying to get help. They also considered the idea that when the ship got stuck, the crew got away on lifeboats and were swept out to sea. None of the crew was ever found and neither was any wreckage or lifeboats. The story of Carol A. Deering is one of the most popular mysteries among sailors. It is now often referred to as the ghost ship of the Outer Banks. Many people have theories about what happened, but it is likely that no one will ever know the truth. Derek J. Lou King. Don't try to follow me. Those are the final words of 24-year-old Derek J. Lou King. Found scribbled on a note in Lou King's abandoned car, it is the final piece of evidence in his strange disappearance. Lou King grew up in Virginia before moving to Knoxville, Tennessee to attend college at Johnson University. After graduating, he took a job as an orderly at Peninsula Behavioral Health Center. Described by his roommate as having a servant heart, it raised a red flag when Lou King failed to show up for work on the morning of March 15, 2012. This uncharacteristic behavior caused Lou King's family to leave Virginia for Tennessee to look for him immediately. A quick search of his computer found searches for the nearby Smoky Mountain National Park as well as reservations for a hotel. The hotel, located in Cherokee, North Carolina, had footage of Lou King leaving his room on March 17, 2 days after he failed to show up for work. Inside the hotel room, Lou King left a Bible and a bottle of alcohol. Determined to find him, Lou King's family set out to search the area for themselves. By accident, the family came upon Lou King's abandoned Ford Escape. The vehicle was in the new-found Gap parking area located along the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. Contents of the vehicle seemed to suggest Lou King had plans of a long hike or even camping. With him, he had a pickaxe, compass, lamp, pocket knife, knife sharpener, tent, sleeping bag, 100 feet of black parachute cord, granola bars, and a survival belt containing a multi-tool, flashlight, and a fire starter. There were also pages from a military survival guide, along with his wallet still full of cash. The last clue was the note, "Don't follow me." Some assumed this was a sure sign that Lou King was planning on leaving and never returning. Lou King's father noted that his behavior had changed recently. Lou King began smoking and drinking. He complained about where he was in life and about being unsatisfied with his job. His family was firm, however, that Lou King was not depressed and would not kill himself. Ignoring the note's request, search and rescue teams began to search the woods in the newfound. Interviews with hikers in the area turned up nothing. Even though it was a beautiful day and the park was busy, no one remembered seeing Liu King. This led investigators to believe that Liu King had either avoided the crowds intentionally or left the trail almost as soon as he stepped foot on it. Trails in the area are well marked, but it is incredibly easy to get lost if someone ventures off of them. Search teams scoured the woods looking for any sign of Liu King. There were no obvious signs of his presence. Many searches led to rhododendron thickets that he could not have passed through without obvious evidence of him being there. Some believe Liu King went missing while scouting the trail, fully intending to come back for his gear. Others think he planned to take his own life, but the purchase of nearly $1,000 in camping gear would prove frivolous if this was his intention all along. So what happened to Derek Liu King? Why did he have an arsenal of outdoor gear but didn't bring it with him onto the trails? Did he write the simple forward note indicating he had no intention of returning? The search for Derek Liu King is not over. Despite years of searching, no sign of him has ever shown up. The 13-year-old's car discovery. Griffin Lake in British Columbia, Canada, is a deep blue expanse sitting below stunning mountains amid beautiful Canadian countryside. Snowy peaks stand majestically at the end of the lake, with the scenic retreat making a perfect countryside getaway location. But in 2019, Griffin Lake became the subject of a mysterious discovery, one that had evaded Canadian police nearly 30 years. Max Warenka was a normal 13-year-old boy from Alberta, Canada. He enjoyed the outdoors and had spent time in the past filming his adventures with his GoPro camera. In August 2019, Warenka had been out paddleboarding on Griffin Lake when he spotted something strange lurking below the surface. A group of people who had been staying in cabins on the lake shore also came to have a look, and they deduced that they were seeing the shiny underside of a car. Bemused as to what a car could be doing at the bottom of the lake, Warenka and his family reported the discovery to the police. After doing some Googling, the group realized that a group of 4 people had been rescued from a sunken vehicle in Griffin Lake in 2007, assuming that the car was simply left over from that. A pretty cool discovery nonetheless. But the Royal Canadian Mounted Police came to the lake to check it out anyway. When the police arrived, the presumed car did not appear so clearly, so the police asked Max to dive into the lake with his GoPro to see what he could find. Lo and behold, the car was still there, in full, and there was a human body in the driver's seat. It quickly became apparent that the car wasn't the one in the 2007 rescue, but one that had been at the bottom of the lake for potentially some time. The police divers team arrived a few days later and confirmed the body in the car. Analysis revealed that the body was that of Janet Ferris, who had disappeared on her way to a wedding in the Griffin Lake area. Police were quick to rule out foul play and rather concluded that it was likely Janet swerved trying to avoid an animal or something else and lost control spinning into the lake. Though the truth will never be fully known, for Janet's family, however, a welcome comfort to finally knowing where their relative was all this time. The pensioner who vanished. James Pruitt, a 70-year-old resident of the sunny state of Tennessee, was reported missing from the Rocky Mountain National Park in early March 2019. Alarm bells were first raised when his car was found desolate at the Glacier Gorge trailhead on the early morning of March 3rd. Upon further investigation, rangers uncovered that Pruitt had not been in contact with before his disappearance since February 28th, as a matter of fact. Naturally, this confirmed the rangers' suspicions and search efforts got underway swiftly later that day. However, as always seems to happen in these situations, the odds were against the search party from the off. The park had been smothered in 2 feet of snow just days before Pruitt's disappearance was reported, and coupled with the rocky terrain, it was becoming evident that finding Pruitt was going to be no easy feat for 6 days between March 3rd and March 8th. An extensive search was conducted. Rangers trawled the park and a variety of specialized teams were also deployed utilizing dogs and even aerial reconnaissance. The search encompassed 15 square miles of lakes, glaciers, and gorges, yet James Pruitt was still nowhere to be found. Owing to the persistent bad weather, search efforts were called off in mid-March, although the story does not just end here. During the summer, efforts were revitalized and focused on more specific areas, and there was also more hope this time as the summer was a busy time with over 2 million people flocking to the park each year to bask in its secluded beauty. This meant that with streams of visitors also traversing the park, it was much more likely that someone was going to stumble on a clue, perhaps one of his belongings or even Pruitt himself. But unfortunately, the series of attempts that took place over the summer yielded no clues nor results, and efforts tapered off. At this point, you would be forgiven for thinking that any chance of Pruitt being found were long gone. However, in October, a new search began, albeit with a different tactic. Instead of focused searches in popular parts of the park, efforts were concentrated in off-trail areas. It was hoped that, as visitors were less common there, clues linked to Pruitt could still be awaiting discovery and any tracks he may have left could still be intact. Ultimately, the search was unsuccessful, but it demonstrated the resilience of the search teams. In a final blow to any hopes of finding Pruitt alive, the park's public information officer Kyle Patterson confirmed that no active searches would be taking place as of the 26th of November 2019. Instead, relying on members of the public to report anything they think might be relevant. As of 2021, Mr. Pruitt is still considered missing, with the occasional Facebook post reminding the public to keep their eyes peeled for clues. With that said, any hope of uncovering the truth of his untimely demise has long been extinguished. The McCullough disappearance. Charles McCullough was 19 in 1974 when he left his home state of Virginia to travel to Oregon for a hiking adventure. Charles, or Chuck as he was affectionately known, had seen some friends before planning a trip to Crater Lake National Park in Oregon for a few days of walking amongst the stunning, snowy mountains, beautiful sunsets and sunrises, and the crystal blue waters of the lake itself. Charles was a keen photographer, and despite weather conditions in the park tending to be poor in January, the month of his trip, Charles ventured on alone into the wilderness. Crater Lake National Park is covered in deep snow during the winter months. The park is still open and visitors can take guided snowshoe tours and even ski in the mountains. However, the conditions can be extreme and traveling alone is not recommended. Actually, the deepest lake in America at a massive 594 meters deep at its deepest point. Charles told his friends that he would be gone for around 2 days before returning to their house for the remainder of his trip. However, he did tell them that if he was not back by the 1st of February to call the police and report him missing. This would turn out to be a valuable piece of information. The days passed and the 1st of February was drawing nearer, with no sign of Charles returning. The day swiftly came and his friends began to worry, calling the police and reporting him missing. The authorities powered through the worsening conditions, but to no avail. A mass search team found no evidence of Charles, with some assuming that he had changed his direction and that they might be looking in the wrong place. However, with nearly 2.5 meters of snow, the search was not getting any easier. And despite the park thawing out as spring drew near, neither Charles nor his body were anywhere to be seen. There had been reports of people spotting Charles in the Diamond Lake area, a 45-minute car ride from Crater Lake, and a park ranger reported that he had given Charles a lift to the entrance of the national park on the 30th of January. What had happened after he dropped Charles off, however, the ranger did not know. Until in 1976, 2 friends from Texas stumbled across chilling human remains after taking a wrong turn on their hike. The remains were confirmed to be those of Charles, but they were scattered strangely, with a lot of the bones still inside Charles's clothes. The weirdest thing, however, was that the remains were found 12 miles from where the park ranger had dropped Charles off on the 30th of January. How had he traveled so far in such awful conditions? The skull that was recovered showed no blunt trauma, and investigators concluded that Charles had frozen to death after removing his clothes in what scientists call paradoxical undressing, feeling hot when you are freezing cold. Charles's family did not accept the explanation and were sure that foul play had occurred somewhere along the line. After all, why were the remains in such a secluded place? Charles's brother wrote in 2016, "If only those broken off shin bones could have talked to us, what do you think they'd say? I bet they'd say something like this: I hitched a ride with this creepy guy who stole my camera equipment and money and shot me in the head. Then on a clear day in the dead of winter, he hauled my body into the remotest part of Crater Lake, took my shirt and boots off and set me up on a log and left, figuring the animals would destroy the evidence by spring." Haunting, tragic indeed, and still utterly bizarre. We will never know what happened to Janet Ferris, James Pruitt, or Charles McCullough. The disappearance of Keith Reinhard. The tiny village of Silver Plume in Colorado has a population of just over 200. It was the location solitude that enticed Keith Reinhard in 1988 to take a 3-month sabbatical from his job as a sports writer, leave his wife and family, and get some much-needed respite and work on his novel. Reinhard also saw the tiny village, which boasted mountainous areas, as an opportunity to overcome his lifelong fear of heights and get in better shape. When he arrived in Silverplume, he leased a small shop to sell antiques and photographs to maintain him financially. It was then that Reinhard learned about the previous owner of the shop, a man called Tom Young, who on July 31st of the previous year went for a walk with his dog and never returned. A month into Reinhard's stay at Silverplume, the bodies of Young and his dog were found propped against a tree in the wilderness. Both had been shot dead. Since Young had purchased a gun several days before he disappeared, the police ruled that Young had shot his dog and then committed suicide. However, local villagers who had known Young disputed the conclusion that Young would ever hurt his beloved dog. Rumors started to float around that something more sinister had occurred to Young. Reinhard was taken by the case, and the similarities between himself and Young. Not only had they both at one point owned the same store, but if Young had killed himself, then both were going through troubled times. He decided to base the main character in his novel on an amalgamation of Young and himself called Guy Gypsum. Reinhard's daughter, Tiffany, said that her father struggled to separate fact from fiction, and this possibly explains what happened next. 1 week after Young's body was found, Reinhard set off to climb to the top of the nearby Pendleton Mountain. Climbing the mountain was a 6-hour hike, and Reinhard had set off in the late afternoon, meaning he would be walking through the tough rocky terrain at night, which was known to be inhabited by wild animals. This was particularly alarming given Reinhard's lack of experience climbing mountains and his prior fear of heights. Reinhard did not return that night, and the next day over 100 men equipped with trained dogs and helicopters began to search the site for him. The search became one of the biggest in Colorado history and was only called off when a plane involved in the search crashed, killing one and injuring another. Reinhard was never found. Following his disappearance, people began to question what had happened to Reinhard. There were two main theories. The first theory was that Reinhard had been attempting to mimic what had happened to Young. In the last page of his novel manuscript, he had written about how the main character was setting off to walk towards the lush, shadowless Colorado forest above. Reinhard might have been trying to live the events of the character before writing it down. Some even believe that Reinhard is still alive, but after learning about the crashed plane that had been searching for him decided to flee. In fact, there have been multiple reports of sightings of Reinhard in countries like Mexico since his disappearance. The second theory is that Reinhard was a victim of foul play. Reinhard's own son Kai supports this theory. He believes that Young was harmed by somebody and Reinhard suffered the same fate. He suspects that the shop that both men had owned might have put them at risk. Others argue that if Young had been killed, the person who killed him would view Reinhard and his interest in Young as a threat, so would want to cause him harm. Disappearance of Jared Negret. Jared Negret was a 13-year-old Boy Scout who has not been seen since July 19, 1991, when he was separated from his troop of climbers in the San Bernardino National Forest. Tragically, the expedition was Negret's first overnight backpacking trip with the Boy Scouts. As an inexperienced climber and described as being slightly overweight, was a tough task. Negret grew tired at about 1,000 feet from the top and was told to remain behind while the others completed the hike. However, when the troop returned, Negret was nowhere to be seen. The troop leader immediately led the 5 other scouts back to the base camp and then hiked about 5 miles in the dark to get help. A massive search was launched, consisting of San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies and rescue teams from as far away as Sierra Madre and San Dimas. They searched the 130-square-mile area of San Gorgonio Wilderness and on the third day focused their search on a 6-square-mile area where one of Negret's footprints was discovered. In this area, searchers also uncovered beef jerky and candy wrappers they believed to have belonged to Negret. The most interesting discovery, though, was Negret's camera. On the camera, there were 12 snapshots. All but one were landscape shots. However, the final image was a close-up self-portrait of Jared showing only his nose and eyes. The photograph had been taken using flash photography as Negret appeared terrified in the image. Some have even claimed to see a pair of eyes behind Negret as if he was using the camera to scare off a threat. It is believed that Negret lost his life by succumbing to the elements or by suffering a fall down the mountain. But over 30 years later, there are no traces of remains of the boy, and Negret's final remain unanswered. Jacobo Grinberg. The last case we'll be talking about is that of Jacobo Grinberg, a Mexican neurophysiologist and psychologist who went missing in December 1994. Dr. Jacobo Grinberg was an academic interested in shamanism, meditation, astrology, and telepathy, among other subjects. He wrote over 50 books on various topics. He was most interested in the relationship between what appeared to be spirituality and science, researching about how the scientific method could be used for telepathy. This work was often rejected by his colleagues as it edged too close to magic to have anything to do with science. He was a spiritual man who was determined to connect these beliefs with science, studying brain waves and experimenting with connections between mysticism and neurophysiology. On December 8, 1994, Dr. Grinberg went missing. He had a birthday party planned for the 12th that he did not show up to. But this was not odd to his family because he had a habit of disappearing without contact for days at a time. Any theories and conspiracies have circulated about where he went and why he left, and indeed how he disappeared. There was only one that was debunked without a doubt. His family did not believe it was possible for him to have voluntarily abandoned both his work and his daughter. The strangest theory that remains surrounding this case is that of Jacobo's wife, Tyr. The day after he disappeared, she cashed a check for $1,000 at a bank and dismissed the watchman at their country house. She told his stepmother that he had left for camps and that they would be leaving to Nepal when he returned. Making arrangements, Tyr left too, but disappearing completely and having little contact with her family outside of a few calls and that year to her mother. When her family was contacted about the missing case, they claimed to have not even known that she had been married at all. This all led to Grinberg's family believing that she must have attacked him and left, perhaps not alone, but with help. However, there was never any proof of this because evidence was never found. Investigators and officers did not find blood, trails, or a body to give them any idea of what might have happened. Although the world can seem like a dangerous place, one can take comfort in the thought that cases such as these stand out because they are unusual and not common. The unexplained disappearance of Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach was a 47-year-old avid hiker of the Mojave Desert in Nevada. On November 10, 2014, he told his family he planned to go on a 2-day hike in the mountains and look for a cave. He never returned. Veach was an experienced hiker who often took solo trips to explore the Mojave and Great Basin deserts of Nevada and California, respectively. He was a minimalist or ultralight hiker. Even though he would camp out for days at a time, he only ever brought the bare minimum of supplies. He rarely brought a GPS, compass, or map. Although he had successfully completed many hikes in his lifetime in that manner, it is still an incredibly reckless way to hike. Veach had a YouTube channel under the name Snakebit McGee where he had uploaded a few videos but mostly used it to watch and comment on others. His channel name came from his tendency to pick up snakes whenever he found them. He was bitten by a rattlesnake, which is where his tag name came from. On June 2014, he commented on a video titled "Son of an Area 51 Technician." In his comment, he stated that he had found an M-shaped cave about 7 miles out from Nellis Air Force Base in the Sheep Mountains, which are north of Las Vegas, Nevada. He explained that he was an experienced hiker who regularly found abandoned mine shafts and explored them, picked up rattlesnakes for fun, solo hiked across mountains others would fear to go, and even came close to Area 51. Despite all this, he never went into the M cave. He claimed that as he began to enter the hidden cave, his entire body began to vibrate. The further in he went, the worse the shaking became. He suddenly grew very scared and quickly ran out of the cave and hiked back to his car. His comments sparked an interest with others who encouraged Veach to go out and discover the cave again, this time filming the entire hike. He agreed and left to find it a second time, carrying along with him a video camera and a 9mm handgun. He posted a video of his hike, but unfortunately was unable to find the mystery cave. The viewers criticized him and provoked him to go out a third time. On November 10, 2014, he left for an overnight trip but never came back. After 2 days and no return, his family contacted authorities who conducted a search. In the beginning of the video he had previously posted, he stood by an abandoned mine shaft while narrating his mission details. It was at that mine shaft that search and rescue found his cell phone 10 days after the search began. Over 30 search and rescue volunteers conducted 3 separate searches and a helicopter flyover to no avail. The trail went cold after that. Many conspiracy theories cropped up. Did he fall down the mineshaft, or had he stumbled upon a hidden entrance to Area 51 and discovered a dangerous military secret? Was he just a reckless hiker who injured himself, or did he reach the M cave and find something ominous inside? A woman claiming to be his girlfriend later posted a comment on his last video that stated she did not believe he had an accident. She explained that he had been suffering from depression for some time and had quit his job the year prior, so she argued that he had most likely taken his own life. So far, no conclusion has yet to be drawn about Kenny Veach's mysterious disappearance. What do you think the truth is?